This is Vindictus Origins, Latiya, by Nexon Korea Corporation. Narrated by Christina Klebe. Latiya watched the sunset blanket the nearby forest in orange light. Night would fall soon, and she'd be able to get her bearings once she could chart the stars. She adjusted her simple pack, overflowing with pelts and hides. Her journey had shown her many new beasts to hunt. So many furs recently. It is getting colder the further north I travel. She decided to rest for a few hours and set down her massive steel lance. Latiya was soon interrupted by a horse's bray coming from the tree line. It sounded distraught. Perhaps someone was in need of aid. Despite rushing towards the forest, Latiya's breathing remained careful and steady. A bright tattoo of a pentacle appeared on her left wrist, manifesting a magical chain hook in that hand. Its blue glow intensified as she hurled it, and the moment it found purchase, she pulled herself towards its anchor with shocking speed. A couple more throws were enough to bring her rapidly to a small clearing in the woodland beside a well-worn road. A teenage boy wearing armor with elaborate engraving on its breastplate was beside a carriage and struggling with its horse. The stallion reared up and down wildly, and the young man was in more danger than he knew. Whoa! Calm down, will you? Stop freaking out! Shh! That shall not pacify the beast. All will be well. First, take a deep breath. Like this. Oh, all right. I'll try anything at this point. Well done. Now step back and repeat that breathing exercise 10 times. Slowly. Latiya quietly approached the horse, who seemed to become even more agitated. There. I know you can sense it, beast. You know that I am the stronger of us. Yet you are a good boy. I do not wish to harm you. She spoke softly, petting the horse's muzzle. It immediately settled down and stopped fidgeting, though its eyes now held a look of pure terror as it gazed at the armored woman, as if it might die on that very spot. The teenager didn't notice that part, though. Phew! Thank you, ma'am. You sure are great with horses. That is not how I would put it. Come here. It shall listen to you now. Latiya waved the boy over. A horse's instincts can make it frightened if it does not notice you approach. They are sympathetic for beasts and shall feed off your own nervousness. Calm yourself and still your heartbeat, and the horse shall follow suit. Though if they persist in acting up, there is another way to get them to listen. Latiya almost described her own technique, the only one she could ever get to work, but thought better of it. She was something of a unique case. Instead, she taught the boy some handling tricks she had learned as a squire, methods he could use to build trust with it. The carriage's driver jogged up to them just as Latiya was finishing. Goodness, what's happened here? Are you two okay? I'm so sorry. I should have hitched him with more care. Thank you for your assistance, miss. No kidding. I'm glad there was someone to help. Latiya turned to see another figure approach. This one was a young man with gentle features who smiled from ear to ear. I heard a horse making these unusual, urgent whinnies. Before I could reach you, I saw her rush in to save the day. The newcomer approached them in good spirits and waved to the teen. You're on your way to Rochester, right? And gladly, I'm to join the academy, replied the boy. Good school. That's some great-looking armor they've got, too. It looks good on you. I guess you'll become a royal knight one day, huh? The boy grinned at the compliment, any embarrassment forgotten in youthful bravado. The carriage driver finished securing the horse's bridle. We'd best get a move on. Try to take advantage of what very little daylight we have left. Don't suppose there's any chance of another carriage coming from Rochester? An evening ride to Kolen, eh? I'll request one as soon as I get there. If you don't mind waiting here, it should pass by before it gets too dark." "Ha! Great! Thanks a lot! I'll make it up to you if our paths cross again." The carriage driver and teen rode off rapidly in a swirl of dust. Latiya turned towards her roadside companion after a moment of thought. Academy? That means school? There is really a school where you can become a knight? Oh, yeah, they're heading to a huge city called Rochest. Both the Royal Army and the Academy are there. The jovial man seemed happy to answer Latiya's questions. "My name's Lan. I hope to become a royal knight one day, too." "A royal knight?" "That's right. I want to become a knight who seeks glory, his name revered across the land." "Must you be a knight simply to seek fame?" There was a bit of an edge to Latiya's voice. She seemed to almost be insulted by his statement, as if she held knights in a higher regard. Lan was taken aback, though he was tactful enough to mostly hide it. "Yes, I have to become a knight. It's important to me. I must continue no matter how difficult the path." Lan fidgeted with his cloak, his voice trailing off. Latiya did not want to overstep if it concerned someone's dream. After an awkward moment of silence, Lan attempted to lighten the mood. "I almost asked if you were interested in becoming a knight too, but from the look of that armor and lance, I guess you must already be one, huh?" "No, I was never a knight. I once hoped to be and served as a squire for a time. Those are lost days. Now, I seek only to become starlight, a beacon to guide those who find themselves in the dark." "Starlight?" Lan looked up at the darkening sky, back to Latiya, and repeated it as he continued to blink. He then broke out into satisfied laughter. "That's great! I've never heard that one before. Actually, you don't seem like you're from around here. Is that a saying where you're from?" His question reminded her of days lost, people lost, dreams lost. The simple question of where she was from was a tale 10 years in the making, and it was the only thing that could make the normally alert Latiya lapse into reverie and remorse. A decade ago. On the southern continent, at the furthest reaches of the kingdom of Delshire, lay a jungle. Though many adventurous souls braved to enter in pursuit of gold and glory, each attempt ended in disaster. Those who entered never returned, and those who waited for them could only wonder at their fate. For this jungle had the most dangerous flora and fauna in the world. Plants that could strangle or poison even from a great distance. Fearsome creatures that could feast upon an entire expedition who themselves only served as prey animals to even larger beasts. People called it the Jungle of Death, and they kept their distance. Delshire no longer wanted any part of it, though it could at least serve as a bulwark against invasion. No one would be mad enough to venture into it. Unknown to the rest of the world, though, the child Latiya had grown up there with her tribe. They thought of it as welcoming. They simply called it home. One day, when she was not quite 10 years old, she scaled up the tallest tree she could find, a favorite pastime. After reaching the top, she made herself comfortable on a sturdy branch. Her eyes, as ever, gazed out past the jungle canopy to the realms beyond. "Awesome! Now I can finally draw!" The child closed one eye and stuck her arm out, looking at her thumb. Latiya didn't really know what doing this motion was supposed to accomplish, but her sister Lua told her that she must do it before making any new drawing. Lua seemed to know about everything, so Latiya retrieved a sharp bit of stone. The adults always spoke of Latiya with pride. While all of their children were capable, one had to be within the jungle of death, she was seen as particularly adept. She would soon be of age and start her training against real game. Still, Latiya felt that her tribe was so focused on survival that they didn't allow themselves to really live. She didn't have any aims to leave her home for good, but did want to see what was out there. From up here in the treetops, those foreign landscapes looked so different. She wondered what they were like. While the tribe loved her, they had never understood her obsession with the outside world. She shrugged and started to draw, carving into the bark with her stone. Latiya was thrilled the drawing was turning out to be her best ever. "Latiya!" She heard a familiar voice from far down below. It was her sister, Lua. Latiya waved happily down towards the jungle floor as she continued drawing. An ethereal chain hook, glowing blue with magical energy, shot into the tree just a few feet from the child. Latiya did not flinch at its sudden whistling sound, though it was exciting enough for her to finally look up from her drawing. Lua used the chain to rapidly pull herself up the tree, sailing through the air at great speed, but landing delicately on the branch beside her. "What are you making this time, Latiya?" "Can you not tell what it is, Lua?" Let me see. Of course! A beetle grappling against a worm." "No." Latiya couldn't believe it. She thought that Lua was playing a trick on her instead of praising her for making the best drawing ever. She was at a loss for words. The older sister tilted her head to one side with a curious look. Why yes, of course. I see it now. Elephants dancing in the clouds. Very creative. It is the village outside the jungle. See, on the horizon? I made it look perfect." Latiya glared at the woman, daring her insult her again. She didn't think it worked, though, because Lua just softly stroked her hair. When Lua eventually spoke, it was with a tinge of sadness in her voice. "You still wish to see the village, Latiya? And the world beyond the trees? It feels cramped here. I want to run around in the plains out there. Latiya, you know what the elders say. The outside is a terrible place, where starving people keep fighting with each other. They do not enter here, so we are safe. But what if you met someone in those plains, someone bad, and you had no trees to climb up and hide in? You would be in very great danger." "Yeah, I guess." "It is a divine blessing that we live in the jungle. We never want for game to hunt. We have peace. Let those on the outside have their wars. Yes, that is the word." "Yeah." When Latiya reluctantly agreed, Lua finally smiled again. She hugged the child, picking her up. "It is getting dark. Let us go home. Oh, and I caught your favorite snake for dinner." "Okay, Lua." Latiya hated the taste of snake, and she felt her older sister treated her like a toddler. Lua summoned the magical chain hook once more to carry them back down to ground level. By now, the sun had set, and it became so dark in the jungle that the child could not see a foot in front of her face. Yet Lua, like all the tribe's adults, had learned how to see by faint starlight. She also used their positions to chart the path home. By the following morning, young Latiya had completely ignored her sister's good advice once again. She had awoken early to sneak away from the tribe's nomadic camp and now stood at the jungle's furthest outskirts. The village she drew yesterday wouldn't be far if she just kept walking forward. She was almost 10 when members of the Kuja tribe began their intense training regimen to become survivalists. Once that started, She wouldn't have the time to sneak away again. She would be forced to remain in the jungle until she was an adult. I cannot do this after my birthday. Yet as Latiya got a closer view of the village beyond the fields, something about it seemed different. The child squinted her eyes and focused her senses, already keener than that of most humans on the outside. She smelled the smoke before she saw it. What is going on out there? She had never seen smoke rise from the village before and watched with even more interest. It wasn't long she heard the sound of drums and horns, and it made her heart beat wildly. A festival! They must be celebrating today. I want to see what an outside festival is like. Oh, I will never get to see one again. This is my last chance. I will just take a quick peek. Latiya's curiosity was too strong to resist, and she took hurried steps out of the jungle for the first time in her life. She ran through fields of low shrubs, the feathery plants so strange against her legs. These soon gave way to tall, green sprouts, laid out in perfect rows. She had never seen plants grow like this. Had the men here done this? In that field, Latiya found the freedom she had always longed for. But she did not find a festival. As she got closer to the village, she realized that something was very wrong. The village was not celebrating anything. They were under attack. What is all this? She saw beings she had never seen before. They looked like something akin to humans, but with green skin and their bottom teeth jutting out like fangs. Latiya watched in growing horror as one grabbed a frantic villager, lifting him easily in a single hand, and barked out a cruel laugh before gutting him with a jagged blade. She fell back from the gruesome sight. Were these men? Why was this tribe attacking the other? Weapons were only to be used against beasts. Around her, the din of the villagers grew. It's the Fomors! My father! He's trapped! Somebody help us!
Quickly, get everyone to safety!
All around her, the people were frantic. It was clear to her that they had little combat experience, and yet they were sacrificing themselves for each other? The Kuja tribe believed it was their duty to teach and train their children to be self-reliant, and once they were grown, they were on their own. The thought of physically saving an adult ran counter to everything they believed. The jungle was a place of survival of the fittest. Why did these people endanger themselves when they did not have to? Nearby, Latiya saw one of these so-called Fomors bear down on a young girl around her own age. They caught each other's gaze. Her face was covered in freckles, as well as a splatter of blood Latiya desperately hoped was not the girl's. Full of new emotions and unsure of her movements, the hunter-to-be grabbed a rock and hurled it at the raider. Get away from her! Her attack struck true, but clattered off the strange, shiny clothing he wore with a ringing sound. What? How? The Fomor paused only for a moment, slowly turning his head to glare at Latiya with murderous intent. The village girl was able to get away, but now the raider was approaching Latiya and joined by several of his gang. She had never felt fear before. Not truly. Her predicament suddenly made plain to her. Flight won over fight, and she retreated, scrambling back through the fields towards the jungle. Latiya screamed as she tripped over a rock, crashing hard to the ground. The Fomors were still right behind her. There was no place to hide in the vast, empty fields, just like Lua had warned her of. The raider leading the others had a menacing smile. Latiya closed her eyes as he raised his weapon high. She suddenly felt a rumbling in the earth and heard the sound of something approaching rapidly. She dared to open her eyes and found the Fomors just as shocked as she was. One retrieved a horn and blew into it. A large shadow flew over her, and in a sudden flash of light, her attacker was slain. Latiya had no words. A man wearing similar, shining clothing was somehow riding a beast, a four-legged type she'd never seen in the jungle. He attacked with a shining spear far larger than any she'd ever seen before. Together, man and beast galloped through the field, impaling the fomors. Who is he? The great Kuja from the legends? The fear that had overcome her vanished, but her rapid heartbeats didn't slow down. She studied the spectacle in a state of wonder, making sure that every detail was engraved into her mind. With every flash of light, another fomor would be slain. Have at you! Ha ha! Awesome! Once the immediate danger had passed, the impressive figure, somehow riding a beast, trotted over to her, extending his hand. The other fomors shall swarm back in due course. Come with me now, milady. There are more fomors attacking the village. You need to save them first. Latiya stood her ground, pointing back to the village where she had last seen the girl. Ho-ho! Fear not! We shall best them soon enough. For now, let's ensure your safety. Those war horns will have drawn more to this spot. The child still refused to join him, pointing back to the village. She was as rooted to that spot as any tree. You truly are stubborn, kid. Most brave, yet I'm afraid we are out of time. The knight reached down and scooped her up onto the saddle, spurring his steed away from the town in the same fluid motion. No, they are attacking the village. All shall be well. See, here come my fellow knights. Wait until you see a wave of us all riding as one. Latiya turned to see where he gestured to. A band of knights, banners trailing behind them, rode up over a ridge and charged into the remaining fomors. Latiya couldn't handle the sudden emotions of this morning. She was relieved the village would be safe. However, she was so caught up in trying to process everything that she didn't realize the knight was speaking. No, that cannot be right. Perhaps you came with your parents in a caravan? No, I am alone. I live in the jungle. The jungle? Surely you jest. What is jest? I live in the jungle. It cannot be the jungle of death. Perhaps there's a new settlement bordering it? Brave pioneers, if so. Turning to address her, he said, Let's get out of here for now. Your safety comes first. Latiya watched as he gently pulled on cords attached to the beast's mouth, and it responded by heading towards the direction he told it. Her tribe were excellent hunters, but the concept of a pet or mount was foreign to her. This is awesome! Who are you? Are you the legendary teacher Kuja? Kuja? No, kid. I'm just Roland, a knight from the kingdom of Delshire. You are the knight? What do you mean? Well, a knight is someone who helps people that are in danger. Knights help people in danger? Latiya had to ask again because the explanation was still so unfamiliar to her. The Ausi Kuja had only survived the Jungle of Death's creatures by becoming its new reigning predators. The beasts had finally, and rightfully to Latiya's mind, learned to fear them in the food chain. The tribe helped by teaching their young, not interceding later. It was the only thing beasts seemed to get right. The whole notion of helping someone in battle caused a strange sensation within her. When Roland saved her, and when she saved that girl, it was a strange feeling, but she liked it. This man was saying that was his role? That a knight's duty was to protect those weaker? So, are you like the stars that show the way when you are lost? The stars? Yeah, the stars are always there to help you not get lost. To not, yes, I guess you could say that. She felt even safer in the knight's presence than when she would sit in the treetops. Soon his animal brought them to the outskirts of the jungle. Roland looked around for where the village's survivors were gathering, hoping Latiya's parents had survived. Let's get you back home. When you said the jungle, you didn't mean, I live in there. Thank you for saving me. Latiya hopped down from the saddle. Roland pointed at the jungle, and the girl simply nodded energetically. It occurred to her that Lua once told her to always give a gift of thanks when a teacher's lesson is particularly valuable. Please take this. Since today's lessons were proving very precious to her, Latiya decided to give Roland her favorite treasure. It was a leopard pendant that her sister had carved for her. She placed it into Roland's hand before running off into the jungle. Roland was so surprised that by the time he looked up to speak with Latiya again, there wasn't a trace of the child to be found. As the girl made it back to her tribe, morning had not yet turned to midday. Lua was the first to see her. What happened to your clothes, Latiya? You did not fall from a tree, did you? Not you. She simply replied, Starlight, night. What are you talking about, sister? Are you well? Did you hurt your head? I am not hurt, Lua. Ah, good. Come along. I caught another of those snakes you like. Instead of listening to her sister, though, Latiya squatted down and drew in the soil with a stick. She was so excited to see a new animal, especially one that was being ridden by someone. She regretted not asking what the beast was called, but she hoped that Lua would know. Lua seemed to know everything. Lua, I want a beast like this. A bunch of squiggly lines? Ah, snakes! Yes, I caught your favorite. We will head back and have dinner. No! I hate you! Latiya shouted tearfully, running back to the camp as Lua watched her with a troubled look. Once again, someone couldn't recognize a drawing that Latiya put her heart and soul into. To be fair to Lua, it really did look like a mass of squiggly lines. If one was to squint, it even looked more like a village than her previous picture. Latiya, wait! What is it with you today? Days passed, and Latiya's 10th birthday was fast approaching. She spent much of it running off into the depths of the jungle, so Lua kept an eye on her from a distance. The young girl finally found what she had apparently been hunting for: a large log. There you are, Lua said. I'm surprised that you have not been climbing trees to watch the outside world. I have been busy lately. Latiya tapped the log. It was her plan to carve it into a weapon, into the same gigantic spear she saw the knights wield, though she did not know its name. She had spent days running around stabbing trees to find one of the perfect consistency. Latiya tried to ignore her sister and focus on carving the log. After several minutes, a confused Lua had to ask about the curious sight. What are you doing, Latiya? Making my weapon. Oh, I see. That log is too big. Here, I already made a nice short spear for you. I hope you like it. Latiya paused briefly to look at her sister. On the day after she met the knight, Roland, she had asked Lua about the weapon she'd be receiving on her 10th birthday and was shown her short spear designed to be lightweight and easy to handle. The child couldn't imagine using something as short as that. No, it is too short. I want it to be longer and sharper like this. Latiya, everyone in the tribe started with a weapon like the one I made. The knights did not. What? Knights? Are you on about those again? You are not scared of the dark, are you? Just try the spear I made. You will like it. Despite her sister's urging, young Latiya continued to carve the giant log for days to mimic the weapon she had seen Roland use. When she finally finished it, she found it incredibly difficult to wield in one hand. She did not fully realize that much of its weight was handled by his beast, and here she was carrying it everywhere on foot. Yet she played with it every day, pretending to be Roland, and eventually became strong enough to wield it all on her own. Ha ha! Fear not! No need to thank me for saving you! I am the best knight in the jungle! Ha ha! What is up with her? It was so much easier when she only watched the outside world. Latiya was playing with a Fomor training target she had cobbled together out of wood. After a successful strike against it, she winked at her sister. Lua let loose a noticeable sigh, but she was happy that Latiya was having fun. Her 10th birthday had arrived. It was finally time to stop being a child in the eyes of the tribe. It was time for her to begin her intense training as a hunter in the jungle of death. Latiya was enthusiastic as she raised her heavy wooden spear, easily as big as herself. Are you ready for training, Latiya? Yeah! And you are seriously going to train with that? Of course! Latiya couldn't understand why her sister asked something so obvious. As the young girl looked at her with confidence, Lua laughed in disbelief and spoke again. It wasn't as if she could do something about it. Very well, then let me explain the history of our Ayusi Kuja tribe and our sacred Magati ritual. Long ago, we used to be nomadic hunters. Yes, in the outside world. Yet the prey was meager, and what small beasts our ancestors could find were too fast to catch on foot. We became scavengers, barely surviving on the carcasses we found. These were not proud days, and we began to die out from hunger. Desperate, and with no other options, we entered this dangerous jungle. The beasts here, far wilder than anything out there, would have massacred us, were it not for a man we met, our legendary teacher, Shuja. Shuja. Latiya muttered the name that was once her goal, that appeared in every old story told by the adults. Correct. When our tribe first encountered him, we could only see his shining eyes darting around the shadows of the jungle. We thought him a predator, and he was. But he was no beast. Still, our tribe believed him to be a sort of incarnation of the panther and began to worship him as a god. It is true, Shuja was powerful, but he may have merely been a man. He may have been something more. Whoever he was, he decided to help our tribe by teaching us the secret to his own survival in this jungle, his unique magic of the Kuja. That is why we eventually took the name of the Ayusi Kuja, the Black Claws, to honor his teachings. And thanks to him, our tribe was able to hunt once more. Latiya, could you please extend your left hand? Lua gingerly touched her young sister's wrist. At birth, every member of our tribe gets a tattoo of a pentacle here. That is the Magati ritual. The Kuja is comprised of 3 levels: the accumulation of mana, the summoning of the hook, and the magic unsheathed. Learning all 3 levels means you would be like the legendary Shuja himself. First, the accumulation of mana is simply the act of absorbing magic. Our jungle remains untouched by the outside world, so it holds a high density of mana. Now that you are 10 and have accumulated your mana, the full amount will always stay with you. The second level, the summoning of the hook, harnesses that mana to summon the Kuja from the tattoo. I cannot wait, Latiya answered eagerly. That is what you use to fly up the trees. Yes. Thanks to the Kuja, I can navigate between the trees quickly to get to you. Or I can use it to catch up to your favorite snake. Ah! Once you are able to use the Kuja freely, you too will be acknowledged as one of our hunters. The final level is called the Magic Unsheathed. This is the peak of Shuja's teachings and turns you into the fiercest hunter of beasts, the most menacing apex predator in all of the world. The mana travels into your other arm and up through your spear. Very few Ayusi Kuja have ever reached his potential. Do not feel bad if you never do, Latiya. The magic unsheathed is so strong that your surroundings would get destroyed every time you were to attack. What do you think, Latiya? Do you want to be like Shuja someday? No, I want to be a knight. The girl didn't hesitate in answering, not for a moment, and her older sister felt heartbroken. But you used to dream about being just like Shuja. Lua shook off her disappointment. Okay, I will show you how to harness the Kuja now. Watch me closely. Yeah! In order to activate the Kuja, you must maintain hunt breathing. Hunt breathing? Hunt breathing is slowly maintaining your breath. You will notice that doing so will activate the mana now inside of you. Lua watched as her sister showed her how to breathe properly. She saw as the pentacle tattoo on Lua's wrist lit up as the air around them seemed to fall still, as if nature itself was frightened of a fearsome beast. Suddenly, Lua had manifested a softly glowing blue hook in her hand. She launched the chain to the far side of the training area and, once it found purchase, pulled herself behind it. Lua flew across the area and struck the Fomor training target with her spear. Awesome! Latiya did not mean to say so out loud, but she couldn't help but be impressed. While she had grown bored at parts of the history lesson, she was very excited to harness this magic for herself. Still, she found herself pretending that Lua was more like Roland, despite her impressive display. Lua noticed Latiya seeming eager and looked at her in pride. What do you think? Better than a knight, right? No, but it was kind of close. Well, that is something, at least. Lua added with a tinge of annoyance. I will try my best, Lua. Slow breaths. She concentrated and began to feel something flow, like a calm wave flowing over her. So this must be mana. As soon as Latiya understood what mana felt like, her left wrist felt hot for a moment before lighting up in a gleaming blue light. The Kuja had been summoned into her hand. Thrilled at the outcome, Latiya puffed out her chest in her best impression of Roland. Now, have at you! She immediately attempted what she had just seen Lua do, throwing her own Kuja hook. It embedded itself near where Lua's had. No! Latiya, wait! Time seemed to slow for a wild moment as Latiya pulled herself along the chain. Suddenly, the world snapped back into place, and Latiya flew towards the Fomor target at breakneck speed. She could hear her sister's urgent voice cry out from far behind her. Lua had only thought Latiya would practice her hunt breathing. It was unheard of for one in training to manifest the Kuja on their first try. Before the woman had even processed what was happening, the girl had already unleashed a powerful throw and had yanked herself forward with far too much magic and not nearly enough instruction. Lua was helpless to react to the blinding speed of what came next, but for her part, Latiya at least had a measure of control. She willed the Kuja to disappear and tumbled across the jungle grass. At least it was far preferable to crashing into a tree. I'm sorry, Lua. I must not have the gift. No, Latiya, you were amazing. No one could do this much on their first try. Lua laughed in good cheer as she embraced her sister. There have not been any who could accomplish this much this soon. Even the most famed hunters of legend took several weeks to light the tattoo, let alone summon the Kuja. You brought both out immediately. If you keep working hard, you really could become like the legendary Shuja. Shuja? No, I am going to become a knight. Okay, fine. That is fine. Then you will be a legendary knight one day. Really? You mean it? Lua was just happy that her sister was okay, and evidently a prodigy at mana manipulation. In this moment, she did not care if Latiya wanted to become a knight over a hunter. Lua also thought that over the next decade or so of hunter training, her sister would have ample opportunities to change her mind. Good job, Latiya. But make sure you keep listening to what I teach you, okay? I will, Lua. Latiya decided to listen to her sister more carefully. A knight crashing into a tree would have been terribly embarrassing. The Kuja may seem easy to use, Lua replied, but there is one very important thing you need to remember. What is it? It is to maintain your hunt breathing. You mean I have to keep doing it always? The Kuja needs your mana, and that is activated by hunt breathing. So if the breathing stops, the mana becomes unreachable. The Kuja scatters. See, Latiya, when something exciting happens, or if you are surprised, your heart starts pounding, yes? Yeah. Your breathing works the same. It is difficult to keep your composure and maintain hunt breathing when you get too emotional. Fear is the main cause. Oh, so that was why... When Latiya flew towards her target, her excitement had thrown her breathing off. She realized this was why the Kuja had vanished. Yes, remember, Latiya, you must persevere even if the trail is difficult. Cultivating a stout heart is the first step in becoming a hunter. I need a stout heart. Okay, Lua. Good. For now, try to focus on keeping the Kuja active as long as you can. I will! Latiya thought this training would surely aid in her becoming an awesome knight. She tried to focus on her sister's tutelage. 10 years later, Latiya landed gently as she glanced behind her. Each of her targets in the training area had been struck with precision, sometimes multiple at once when she had her positioning right. Latiya was now the best hunter of all the AUC Kuja, and she was able to keep her mana accessible continuously through constant hunt breathing. Except for those times when she'd exert herself too far, she always had access to it. This made her martial prowess unmatched. Of course, she also took the trustworthy weapon that had been with her for so long. She never had learned the knight's name for it, and still thought of it as a better spear, despite its impracticality in the dense foliage. It had been a true testament to Latiya's combat prowess that it was effective among those trees at all. Surveying the targets now, she nodded to herself. There was no more she could learn here. None in the tribe objected. She soon received her hunter's garb, which symbolized Shuja the panther. Becoming a full-fledged huntress meant that she was now considered an adult in the eyes of the tribe. This meant independence. Many new hunters would set out to claim their own piece of the jungle, keeping to themselves or starting their own families. Latiya, however, had never stopped dreaming about the outside world. She was finally allowed to leave the jungle, and nothing was going to stop her. Skilled like no other in how best to survive in nature, she packed a light bag of only the simplest travel and camp tools. Food was not a concern for AUC Kuja predators. Her family gathered around to see her off. Latiya, keep a stout heart. You are unaccustomed to the dangers beyond the jungle. Lua tried to impart what remaining wisdom she could. And you had better not throw a tantrum if you cannot find any snake meat. Okay, Lua. You plan to return to us once you become this outside knight? Yes, I promise, and I shall share all that I learn. Heading out, the Kuja chain brought her quickly to the field where she'd first stepped into the wider world. Any traces of that battle had long vanished, though Latiya could see the fight in her mind's eye with a hunter's clarity. She still trembled at the terror of that day, but her heart filled with excitement whenever she remembered Roland's swift attacks. The reality that she was here once more was a rush of emotions that threatened to disrupt her hunt breathing. Latiya walked straight ahead, through the field, and into the village. They survived. Latiya knew she shouldn't be surprised to see the village rebuilt, but she had not been able to view it from her treetops since her training began. She was greatly relieved, and it was even looking better than last time. Happiness had returned after such senseless slaughter. Latiya examined the solid fences now surrounding the town. They hadn't been there before. The huntress was a nomad. Fortifying one spot was strange to her, but she could see the appeal. She next came across a shop. Though she had no context for it, first thinking it to be a house, she realized it was some form of trading post. Her tribe occasionally set up similar locations, though they were always temporary. Latiya wondered if she could trade her hides there for a few supplies, and perhaps even some information about knights. At the moment, she hadn't the faintest idea how to even seek them out. Welcome to Marie's General Store! A young woman of Latiya's age stopped dusting the shelves and approached with a bright smile. Her ginger hair was done in pigtails, and there were freckles on her pale skin. She had never seen freckles before. Or had she? Hello, hi. Good afternoon. Oh. Marie started before looking at the huntress curiously. I'm so sorry, it's just, we've met before, haven't we? The woman leaned in and examined Latiya's face very carefully, then blushed as she pointed at her. Latiya realized that this was the same girl she had helped by hurling a stone at the Fomor, and found herself grinning. Yes, that is right. My goodness, it's you! Thank you so much for saving me that day. I'm Marie. I'm so glad you're safe. I was worried because I never found you after that day. I feared the worst. Latiya was not used to people worrying for her safety. Roland had, and it left an impression. Now this merchant was speaking rapidly, words tumbling over each other like a stream over stones, and she realized that Marie was holding her hand. Latiya tried to focus on what she was telling her about how the village was almost destroyed that day, but she was suddenly finding it difficult. It turned out that the villagers refused to give up. They were willing to sacrifice for the sake of their children. Marie spoke proudly, if quickly, about how they all banded together and gathered what they could to share with one another until their village was restored. Marie and many others were orphaned that day, but everyone pitched in to help. Latiya tried her best to listen and nod along. Marie's voice might have been the only thing faster than the Kuja. Oh dear, I've been speaking of myself for a frightfully long time. What brings you to my shop? I am Latiya. I wish to prepare for a long journey. Do you have travel supplies? Could I trade these hides with you? Quality leather? Sure. I mean, anything for the woman who rescued me. Let's see here. Latiya noticed that the woman's voice wavered as she looked through the bundle of leathers, her cheer replaced by worry. This is, you must be an incredible hunter. These are from jungle creatures, really rare and dangerous to procure. I'm not sure I even have enough money to cover what this is all worth. Would you maybe take some items instead of just money? Items, yes. I would like items. What is money? Marie did not hear that last part coming up to Latiya. The shopkeeper snapped her fingers and pointed to a long object in the back of the store, covered by a very clean but very old tarp. Of course! I have a lance! That'd interest you, right? If you'd like an upgrade. Lance? What is a... Great! Ta-da! Latiya stopped in her tracks when Marie pulled off the tarp with a flourish. There, against the far wall, was a knight's weapon, just like she had seen Roland and his friends use. Unlike her wooden version, it gleamed even in the darkened shop. After a moment of shock, she rushed over to it, testing its heft. This one was definitely heavier than what she was used to, but it was more durable and far sharper. She had never gotten her own to gleam so. Yes! Yes! Please! I like it! Yay! Wait, I guess I should say, huzzah, shouldn't I? That's what knights say at jousting tournaments. I really must thank you. I never really wanted to take on this item in the first place. Marie offered almost conspiratorially. I never thought I'd find a buyer, and the seller, well, he immediately spent it all at the tavern. What a waste, but I felt guilty, you know? Marie brushed aside the memory and smiled at Latiya, who felt the lance was priceless. She was thrilled that her hides would be enough. Also, yes? Do you need anything else? Latiya hoped the merchant would know about the men who once saved her village. Marie, how does one become a knight? A knight? How do you become a knight? Latiya was worried that she sounded weird since the shopkeeper looked perplexed. Marie clapped her hands and turned back to Latiya. Well, there's a knight that I know very well, actually. Let's go see him. Although I'm not sure you'll get a proper answer. He's a little grumpy. Marie led the way out of the shop. They walked through the village to its far end, where an old man sat and tended to his weary leg. It looked like it had been crushed in the past. One of those four-legged beasts the knights rode grazed nearby, though both the knight and his mount looked like they had seen better days. The man wore no helmet, his face framed by a tangle of unkempt hair and a scraggly beard. A variety of empty bottles were littered all around him. Hey, mister! Hi there! He acknowledged Marie with a grunt, but his eyes were on Latiya. His surprised look was fixated on the lance she carried. That lance. As silence fell between the two of them, Marie thought it best to begin introductions. This man's known as the Crow Knight. I know he doesn't look like much, but don't worry, he's a knight all right. He's even the original owner of that lance. And this is Latiya. I've told you about her before. She's the girl who saved my life, remember? Ah, she's the one. She's, well, pretty hard to forget. Mister, Latiya wants to become a knight. Is there any way you could help her? He sized Latiya up a bit. You want to become a knight? You sure did come to the wrong person. Go ask somebody else, kid. Latiya could not believe what she heard. Mister? Marie attempted. Come on, please. It is fine, Marie. I do not wish to be a burden. The man did not seem inclined to help. Sharing a plaintive shrug, the girls turned to walk back. Kid, just look, he called out after them. You want to become some cripple like me? Think about what you're asking. He rubbed his sore leg, staring at the village as if he wasn't concerned with Latiya. He was not as good at hiding the waver in his voice, though. I am sure that leg injury came about when you saved someone's life. That is why I want to become a knight. The old man was shocked by this. He leaned forward. Oh, really? Huh? And do you even know how to use that lance? Yes, she answered with confidence, and the Crow Knight limped to bring over that creature. He handed the reins to Latiya. From the jungle, huh? Okay. See that tiny leaf out there on that branch? Charge at it and pierce it with that lance. If you can hit it, I'll help you. But if you miss, then you promise to forget about this daydream. Go find yourself a happier life. Latiya did not remember mentioning the jungle. Was the Crow Knight actually suggesting that Latiya give up on her dream if she could not pass his test? That's ridiculous, Marie shot back, taking Latiya's hand in hers again. Let's just go. I'll find someone else who can help you. Latiya was focused on the strange animal before her. After a moment looking it over, she handed the reins back to the knight. I do not know how to ride this beast yet. Huh! You can't even ride a horse at your age, and you want to become a knight? Truly? It'd be best for you to just give all this up. He scolded her, but it seemed to Latiya like he was really disappointed in himself for expecting something else. Latiya looked the Crow Knight right in the eyes, beneath his bushy brows. Can I do it without that beast you call a horse? What now? Without a horse? Yes. The knight shared a look of confusion with Marie. Latiya immediately entered a hunting stance. She summoned the Kuja and hurtled towards the tree. Have at you! It was a simple matter, not any different from the training she had been doing for the last decade, and she easily stabbed the small leaf at the end of her charge. After swinging from the Kuja and landing with a perfect backflip, she walked back to them satisfied. Marie looked awestruck. That was amazing, Latiya! What kind of magic was that? Magic? Oh, I see, Latiya answered her. That was the Kuja. It is something my tribe can do. She had never been asked to explain it. She struggled on how to elaborate, but Marie was already turning back to the Crow Knight. How's that, mister? You're going to help Latiya now that she succeeded, right? Right? He hesitated for a moment, then sighed heavily. A promise is a promise. I'll help you, kid. But you really want to become a knight? It means that much to you? Marie also looked curious. Latiya remembered the impression that Roland had made on her in childhood, all gleaming and flashing light. He looked like the stars, or perhaps the sun, and being rescued by him had shifted something within her. Becoming an awesome knight is my dream. Wait, what? Did you just say an awesome knight? Awesome? Yes, an awesome knight. The Crow Knight turned to Marie, and they looked at each other in no little shock. Damnation! After a moment, Marie began to laugh uncontrollably. The knight just sat in stunned silence. Latiya avoided making eye contact with either of them. Feeling her face grow hot, she worried she must have given them a poor answer and did not know how to react. Oh, I'm sorry, Latiya. I didn't mean to laugh. It's just you've been so calm and composed from the moment you stepped into my store. Awesome was just so unexpected to hear. I'm glad, though. All knights should be awesome. Ahem. Kids. The Crow Knight was retrieving the reins to his horse. I'll teach you how to become a knight, Latiya. Come back to this place tomorrow, dawn, and get used to it. Being a squire means working hard every day. He did a decent job at sounding tough, but Latiya could see that he was holding in laughter as he took his horse's reins and made his way to the village tavern. Marie gave Latiya a playful nudge as he left. The huntress felt a bit overwhelmed. At dawn the following day, the Crow Knight looked up from his packing as he heard people approach. Marie, what on earth are you doing up at this hour? I spent all night talking to Latiya. I found out where she's from, and she really doesn't know anything about the world, so I decided to travel with you both to help out. She did save my life, after all. Besides, what would you two even talk about besides training? There is more to life. Marie. It was Latiya. She had walked up to the duo in impossible stealth. Don't worry, Latiya. I'm a merchant, and I'm investing in your potential. I have a keen eye for people. The Crow Knight shook his head. Marie, you can't just follow my new squire around like some pup. And what about the store? You can't leave your shop. It's okay, mister. I got someone to run it for a while, and it's not like thieves come to remote villages like ours anyway. It was such a bold and confident attitude. Latiya had never met anyone like Marie before. The Crow Knight could only nod begrudgingly, as it didn't look like Marie was giving them a choice. Just damn it, don't be an inconvenience. And behave. Resigned to his fate, he handed over his horse's reins to Latiya. You'll have to learn sooner or later, kid. Yes, of course. She answered confidently, but it turned out to be a lot harder than she realized. The horse would not stay still and resisted all her efforts to climb into the saddle. As Latiya felt her face going red, Marie took the reins from her and lightly hopped into the saddle, reaching down. See? I knew you'd need me. Here, Latiya, I'll teach you. Climb on. I've actually ridden plenty of times, like whenever I had to follow merchant caravans to the cities. My thanks. Kids, the Crow Knight said, if you're ready, let's begin. The following days would prove a challenge to the squire. The Crow Knight hadn't seemed thrilled over the last few days once Marie was accompanying them, but his mood did lighten as she taught Latiya to ride. That aspect would have been troublesome to teach in his condition. He instead covered everything about the chivalry and politics. He also taught her calligraphy, as her tribe never had traditional writing. It came as quite a shock to Latiya when she learned that the knight she dreamed of becoming was not named after a star-filled sky, and the words were even spelled differently. She still felt that being like starlight to people who were lost was a noble goal, though, so she eventually laughed at her misunderstanding. Latiya received little instruction in the lance, but only because she already had mastery over it. One less thing to teach. Lance work is sordid, and horsemanship is, well, let's just pretend you're getting there for now. The Crow Knight grew more serious. That's not all you'll have to master for a joust, though. Joust? The word sounded strange to Latiya. What is this joust? It's what you're so desperately after, kid. It's how you can become a knight. I guess you wouldn't know, but right now we're in Delshire. Knights have a lot of jousting tournaments here, as do their neighbors in the kingdom of Galen. Latiya leaned in eagerly, hungry to hear more. She learned that knights would participate in these tournaments, charging each other on horseback. Squires like herself were also allowed, though by invitation only. She would have to work her way up the ranks to earn invitations to ever larger competitions. Eventually, if she could enter a grand tourney and win, the king would grant her a knighthood. She thought her quest would involve saving people, but she was willing to do whatever it took to become a knight. "You'll win money, depending on how well you do," the Crow Knight continued. "As long as you can scrape together enough to get by, you'll be all right." Latiya was hopeful she could earn her knighthood soon. Yet one obstacle loomed: her skills in the saddle. Or lack thereof. "Latiya, hold the reins tighter! Oh no!" The horse let out a loud whinny as it kicked the squire off. Latiya brushed the dust off her clothes with a frustrated sigh. If it was a matter of grappling or slaying this horse, she wouldn't be having such difficulty. Was I on that beast any longer this time? She was growing frustrated. Growing up, she'd had dreams where she would master this step instantly. Marie tried her best to put on a cheerful face. Not really. Are you okay?" "I am well. After you fall from your first tree, little else can compare." She learned the fundamentals of horse riding from Marie, but still hadn't been able to connect with a horse. Any steed Latiya tried to befriend would get frightened and shy away. Whenever the huntress actually managed to climb onto one, it would only buck her off in a panic. "I've never seen them act like this before. It's almost like they're frightened." "They are wise to be so. Though I will not, I shall not hurt these beasts." Latiya's features took on a shadowed and menacing grin, so much that the shopkeeper gasped and stumbled back a bit. "Latiya, no wonder! You're so intimidating to the poor creatures." "Thank you," Latiya answered with pride. "I have spent years perfecting it." Marie tried to shake off her words as she whispered to the Crow Knight. "I know she hates animals, but here and there she seems like one herself. Mister, does she really need to be able to ride a horse?" "If she can't even get riding down, she'd never serve as a knight anyway. Any title would be meaningless." He was crude, but he wasn't wrong. Latiya's keen senses couldn't help but overhear, and her insides twisted into knots. What would she have to do to ride properly? Could a simple beast actually put a stop to her dream? She had half a mind to just eat the horses. "Latiya, I think I've got something," Marie offered with a sly grin. "All your previous training was as a hunter, right?" Latiya was quick to answer. "Yes, my tribe trains to be more dangerous than any beast in the jungle of death." "Then scare it." "Huh?" Latiya's confusion was plain. Marie merely continued on at her usual fast pace. "That's right. If they're trying to run away because they're scared of you, try the opposite approach. Give them a taste of that absolute fear. Try making them too scared to run from you. Make them quiver in their hooves." "Even more scared? Yes. All right, we shall try it." "Kids, horses are sensitive and delicate animals. That won't work." The Crow Knight tried to get in edgewise. "Try it, you'll see, after you're kicked into next week." Though her mentor scoffed and looked around his saddlebags for another bottle of wine, Latiya was desperate to try anything at this point. "Try intimidating it as soon as you approach," Marie said excitedly. "Don't let it move at all, not 1 inch." Latiya glared at her horse with murderous intent. Her glare was primeval, atavistic. The sheer menace she exuded was undetectable except by scent and instinct. Standing some distance away, Marie and the Crow Knight didn't even notice. Latiya's horse did, though, and it wasn't willing to budge an inch until the huntress tugged at the reins. It immediately struggled to comply. "Marie, you were right! It is mine!" "Ah!" In her excitement, she had once more forgotten her hunt breathing. The instant her facade dropped and the steed saw its chance, it bucked her off and bolted from their campsite. "I understand you now," Latiya told Marie. "I think that will work, as long as it believes I mean it." During her next weeks of training, Latiya first made the horse obey before even attempting to climb into the saddle. The process worked well enough in its own, odd, cobbled-together way. All of this confused the horse more than anything. It could not see Latiya as a partner in combat, but as a predator poised to strike. She was able to ride it, in a manner of speaking, but its motions were stiff and clumsy. She always felt guilty for the implied cruelty, though. The Ayusi Kuja were raised to not play with their food, and they always dispatched beasts as quickly and painlessly as they could. So after every practice ride, to try and make amends, Latiya would diminish her aura and offer the horse carrots. This rarely worked, and her attempts to brush its mane proved even less successful. "I think you're doing great, Latiya," Marie cheered her on. "I really think he's responding to you. Right, mister?"
Responding? Look at their gait. I've seen pack mules with more agility. Do you really think this is going to work, Marie? She lived in the jungle of death, but she can't ride a horse? What's the world coming to?
Ow!
And where's my wine?
Latiya! Marie called out in concern. "Are you okay?"
You've got to stop asking that, Marie. I'm begging you. This is a squire's life. You can tend to her later.
"Fear not, I am..." Ow! Her riding technique did improve in time. A change of the seasons found Latiya a competent, if unorthodox, rider, and the Crow Knight approved her admission for jousting tournaments in his name. The three headed to the small city nearby where one such tourney was being held. A lively crowd had already gathered to cheer the knights and squires. The streets were beautifully decorated with ribbons and accessories on the trees and in windows. Merchants were even hawking limited collectibles celebrating this squire or that knight. "Oh, I haven't been to a city in forever," Marie said, taking the squire's hand. "What do you think, Latiya?" "Milady, I am at a loss for words. I have only seen villages like yours. Where did they even find this much stone?" Marie watched her be mesmerized by the colorful displays and throngs of people. Once again, Latiya was overcome with a swirl of emotions.
"I know a few words for it," the Crow Knight muttered. "Nothing fit for you kids to hear."
The Crow Knight was unimpressed by the city and urged them on with his typical indifference. He led them gruffly to the tournament grounds and registered Latiya with an emblem he always wore, a badge that was proof of his knighthood. She could not wait to earn her own to wear.
"These initial tournaments are a good place to get in some practice. Get to learn about your opponents up close, since you'll surely face them again. Try all the things you've learned, kid."
"Yes, I shall not fail." Her first match began not too long after. It was a curious arena, long and thin, with rows of bench seating running along both sides. A short fence separated the two jousters, and each side had a tent and staging area. The seats were already filled with excited audience members, and their loud cheers echoed through the town streets.
"Knights, approach your starting positions."
An announcer stood at the center of the field, speaking into a cone to amplify his voice.
To the north, the front runner, the chameleon that mimics his opponent's skill with incredible precision, Sebastian.
The crowd cheered enthusiastically. "Huzzah! Sebastian!"
To the south, a new contestant, the squire of the crippled crow, Latiya.
Latiya was caught off guard at the drastically different reaction she received to her opponent.
Boo! A pox on the money-hungry crow!
She did not understand the money-hungry crow, but remembered money were those shiny discs Marie collected. Money-hungry? Her mentor didn't eat them, did he? She could just hunt beasts for them all if they asked. A confused Latiya turned to him, but he seemed as unfazed as ever.
Ignore these intros, Latiya. They're just something to rile up the crowd. They don't mean anything, her mentor responded dispassionately. They like it when a hero goes up against a villain, but it's all for show.
Oh, I see. She didn't see, but his confidence calmed her. The other opponents, now looking at her, didn't strike her as particularly friendly. Marie seemed just as confused and quiet as she. Embarking and his stallion both looked resplendent in magnificent armor. He trotted up to Latiya and inspected her from head to toe, and his gaze grew disdainful as he inspected her Ayusi Kuja garb made of various leathers and woven textiles. They both reached their starting positions, and the moment the flag was dropped, each charged fiercely at the other. Just as they were about to make contact, Embarking suddenly changed his grip and mimicked her own shoulder strategy. In the blink of an eye, her instincts took over. She summoned the Kuja, using its chain to launch herself 30 feet above the horses. She landed gracefully on the tourney field with several backflips, and the shocked audience fell silent. Until...
Defeat by fall,
came the announcer's call.
The squire, Latiya, has fallen from her horse.
The crowd laughed at her, mocking her failure. At first, she could not understand, as she knew she had dodged Embarking's attack perfectly. It wasn't until she noticed her skittish horse still galloping away that she realized her error. She hadn't planned to leap from the saddle. It was a reflex. Now even the Crow Knight muttered in disbelief. The only person in the entire arena that looked happy to see her was Marie. "It's okay. You're too used to dodging animal attacks, that's what it is. Listen to me, not them. I know you'll do better next time." Latiya tried to stay in her saddle in the following matches, but it was no use. Whenever an opponent was about to strike her, she leapt out of the way like a nimble panther. The audience was learning to appreciate her acrobatic feats, but that wouldn't help her win a joust. Her instincts for self-preservation were just too strong. It didn't help that her horse was terrified of her. While other knights could maneuver them with practiced ease, it was all she could do to keep it charging in a straight line. One day, after a series of unsuccessful jousting tourneys around Delshire, Marie strolled up to Latiya with a sly smile. "Hey, Latiya, come with me, okay?" "Of course. What news?" The women ended up at the city's blacksmith. Latiya knew that places like this made the heavy armor knights wore, but she had no idea they felt so hot inside. It soothed her as it turned her thoughts back to the jungle and its heat so many outsiders would find oppressive. The Crow Knight was already there, inspecting an intimidating suit of black armor. Marie gave Latiya a soft push on her back, nudging her towards it before she couldn't contain herself anymore. "Do you like it? Well, ta-da! This armor was made for you, Latiya." "Armor? For me?" "Mm-hmm. It's the same type worn by all the knights. Well, almost." Latiya tried to shake off her surprise as she walked around the suit to get a better look. The armor was fashioned with the iconography of panthers and other great cats. Instead of a cape or tabard, a leopard skin was draped across the back. She was still struggling to find the words when the Crow Knight turned to her.
"Kid, listen to me. Your combat instincts are too good Evading is not always the answer. Not for knights. There are some things you can't dodge, especially if you're jousting or trying to defend others. The armor will help. Let it do that job for you.
Oh, I see.
The lances we use in these jousts are wooden, safe. A lot like the one you carved, actually, only hollow. These are friendly competitions, so the armor will do most of the work while you get in some practice with it. For now, just focus on attacking. That's what you're good at, after all.
Okay, I shall do this. Latiya listened to his advice about the match and took it to heart. Certainly, armor like this would mean that the opponent's strikes wouldn't inflict damage. She began to feel her confidence recover and examined the armor with the same intent that she'd go over a set of animal tracks. I cannot believe you did this for me. I just decorated it a little bit, Marie managed through her blush. Do you like it? Yes, I love it. Thank you, Marie. Latiya was touched and embraced Marie tightly. Oh, I mean, sure, After a moment, Marie stiffened, laughing more loudly as she wriggled free. Mister helped with it too. Isn't that right, mister?
Oh, don't mind me, kids, the Crow Knight interjected. I just commissioned and paid for the damn thing.
Thank you, both of you. I shall not lose now. She put on the armor as they cheered her on. Latiya could not wait until the next match and stepped out of the forge confidently. Adopting her mentor's advice, she was never caught by surprise again. Just as he said, the armor was up to its task, so Latiya focused on hers. Now, more weighed down in the saddle, she was better able to fight off her instincts to dodge and focused solely on her attack. Few competitors could evade her, and none could withstand her strike if it landed. She started winning matches, with her rank and popularity growing over the coming months. The Panther Knight. That was the name she was given by the audience, thanks to the armor, and she began to dominate the tournaments in small to medium-sized cities. Before Latiya even knew, she became a celebrity of jousting tournaments on her own. The crowds began to chant about the panther and the crow, and their sentiment changed entirely. One day, after many months of competition across the southern continent, Marie rushed up to the others in glee. Latiya, look at this! What is it, Marie? She excitedly handed Latiya a piece of parchment. An invitation from the king himself! The grand tournament of the kingdom of Delshire! The king? He'll be in attendance. If you can impress him, you'll finally become a real knight, right, mister? The Crow Knight retrieved the parchment. His grin got wider the further down he read.
Well, what do you know? Yeah, kid. Win their grand tournament and you'll definitely earn a knighthood.
Latiya realized just how close she was to reaching her dream. Then we shall prepare. We must not be late. The roads were clear and safe, and their good cheer made their steps light. I've never seen a city of this scale. Even the gates are taller than most houses. Marie sighed as she rested her head on Latiya's shoulder. Isn't it amazing, Latiya? Yes, milady. It is truly, well, awesome. Ha! I'll say. Both women were overcome by the sheer visual spectacle before them. Colorful banners and heraldry hung from every surface, 1,000 coats of arms seemingly there to challenge old heroes while inspiring new ones. Flags and confetti danced lightly in the breeze that wound through the towering stone manors and guilds. It was almost as if the entire capital was having a parade, yet this was merely the start of the celebration. Marie was pretty festive herself. She decorated her outfit with an array of ribbons and flowers in Latiya's purple tournament colors.
Don't let the sights distract you, kid.
The Crow Knight clapped a hand on her other shoulder.
You've got a job to do.
The Crow Knight kept his gaze fixed straight ahead, and Latiya tried to take it as a lesson.
This is it. Only the best get this far. So these opponents will be the toughest you've ever faced. More than a few squires will be vying for that knighthood. They'll be strong and have tricks up their sleeves to boot.
Tricks? In their sleeves and their boots? Duplicitous indeed. Fear not, I shall not fail.
You've done right by me, Latiya.
Hearing him actually say her name was a shock. He looked down to his badge, taking it gently in his calloused hands.
I know you've got what it takes. You've got heart. That stout heart you go on about. This is what you've been training so hard for. It's yours. You just have to fight hard and take it.
The first match was about to begin. Latiya sat astride her horse and lifted her lance upward in a customary salute as the announcer addressed the crowd.
To the north, the magnificent mirroring man-at-arms, the crafty chameleon that can copy his opponent's stance and style. It's Sebastian!
Yeah! The audience cheered. Sebastian the chameleon! She could not believe this twist of fate. Her opponent was the very first one she ever faced, the match where she had to endure such ridicule. The crowd was cheering for him just as enthusiastically as before. Latiya hunkered down in her armor, preparing for the worst, when Marie came over to comfort her. So it's him again. Are you okay? Marie, fear not. He shall not best me a second time. Once the loud cheers of the crowd finally died down, the announcer once again raised his arms.
And to the south, the fierce hunter that never misses an opponent's weakness. The panther that takes down prey with a single powerful strike. It's Latiya!
Though she'd gotten used to the audience cheering for her in recent matches, she was shocked by the loud applause and chanting of her name. It was a stark difference from her first joust against Sebastian. The host waved the flag to signal the start of the event. Latiya and Sebastian charged towards one another, their mounts' hooves churning up the ground in clouds of fury. She knew he was a deceptive duelist and decided on her course of action. Latiya hunkered down in her saddle and braced for a heavy impact, seeing Sebastian mimic her. Their lances crashed into each other with a clang that echoed past the arena and through the nearby streets. The clamor of scraping metal. Sebastian was knocked straight off, 10 feet back, and another 10 tumbling through the field's dirt and mud. The ecstatic crowd jumped up and started cheering before he had even rolled to a stop. Sebastian was as fast as her and far trickier, but she surpassed him in muscle and stamina. She attacked him in the most honest way she knew how, in a straight contest of strength. He took the bait and paid the price. In terms of power, a chameleon cannot hope to best a panther. As the Crow Knight nodded approvingly, the audience chanted her name. Latiya saw the Crow Knight grin for the first time in ages.
Huzzah, Latiya! Panther Knight! Huzzah!
Sebastian! Defeat by fall!
The announcer stumbled over his words and his shock far after the crowd had already seen the victor. Latiya! I just knew you'd win! Marie cheered. But even I didn't dream of anything like that. Her victory continued on to the match after, and the one after that.
Latiya! Just one strike! Huzzah!
The cheers for her never stopped in any matches.
Great work, Latiya! And mister, be more supportive. Tell Latiya that she's the most amazing, awesome knight to be right now.
Marie gestured wildly at him. She hadn't noticed that the stoic Crow Knight was as jovial as he'd been in years. He made a show of tending to his leg again and hid his smile as best he could.
Yeah, not bad, kid. People love to see a new star rise to the occasion.
Latiya knew that this was a proud boast on his part, and it meant much to her. She had not heard that term before, though she thought of a new star appearing in the night sky, and that filled her with pride. Latiya continued to win each of her matches, and eventually made it to the finals. It was now the last round.
Latiya, this is it! You'll finally become a real knight, if you just win one more time,
Marie said.
Relax, but not too much, okay?
Do not worry, Marie. I am going to win this. The flag dropped, and the two finalists charged towards their destinies. As the audience watched on the edge of their seats, Latiya's hunt breathing caused her to enter an almost trance-like state that she had never experienced before. It felt like all the lights, sounds, and her senses were hardening, as if time was slowing down all around her. She felt her body's reserves ebbing in and out like waves. Her lance was suddenly surrounded by a subtle blue light. Unbidden, Lua's words from years back howled in her head like a harsh wind.
The final level is called the Magic Unsheathed. Turns you into the fiercest hunter of beasts, the most menacing apex predator in all of the world. So strong that your surroundings would get destroyed every time you were to attack.
Even though the tournament lances were made of hollow wood, Latiya could sense the mana channeling into it and knew that it would kill her fellow squire.
No, not now. Why now of all times?
Latiya said to herself. Would he survive if I avoided his vital areas? Maybe if I... No, he still would not be safe. The magic unsheathed is far too powerful. I cannot risk his life just to achieve my selfish dream. This is a game no longer. This lance is not fit for sport. Not anymore. She had waited so long for this moment, just to have her hopes dashed. Still, she pointed her lance towards the sky as she veered away and rode past her opponent, conceding the match. The audience heckled her furiously. They had watched as she conceded a clean shot, and their confusion was being replaced by anger at missing out on a good show.
Bad form! Boo!
Latiya was just as upset as the crowd and returned to her tent powerlessly with her head hung low. Marie kept looking at her. For once, the merchant wasn't able to find any words, where the normally stoic Latiya was desperate to try and tell her several things at once. Marie looked as confused and hurt as the audience. Latiya locked eyes with the Crow Knight then. There he was, the only one, the only person who understood and empathized with her decision. He had realized that she had manifested her tribe's magic unsheathed.
It's all right, kid. There will be other chances.
I am yet unsure of that. The trio wordlessly rode out past the capital's towering gate and onto the wide road to Galen. Latiya felt her mouth go dry and held her reins with trembling hands. The whole affair was still a bitter pill to swallow. She had come so close to finally becoming a knight, only to have it stolen from her, like some vulture scavenging her kill and then flying away into the night. The magic unsheathed. It had all happened so suddenly. Although Latiya had achieved what all the hunters of the tribe aimed for, she only felt resentful. Why did it have to curse her at such an important moment? I am unsure what to do now. She thought of all of Lua's stories about Kuja and laughed bitterly. Latiya, how are you laughing right now? Marie asked her in confusion. You were so close. Why did you give it all up? The squire cringed. She always had trouble understanding Marie, but she'd never hurt her before. She inwardly vowed to never do so again. I am sorry. I know you are, but why? What happened? Latiya did not look at her for a long moment because she could not bear to. She lost control and fell into her long story explaining the Magati ritual, the Kuja, and Kuja. She wasn't sure if the merchant would understand what she was trying to say, but she needed her to. Latiya knew she was sounding emotional, but she couldn't help it. After she had finally got it all out, a long moment passed. Latiya kept looking down at her lap, too scared to look over, her hunt breathing long forgotten. Of course, you're a legendary warrior. Of course you are, Marie responded. You never cease to amaze me, Latiya. The squire thought it was a compliment, but something about Marie's expression and tone sounded rougher to her. It made her ill at ease, and the trio continued down the road in uncomfortable silence. The mood hadn't lightened by the time they had supper at a roadside inn. You're heading up Galen way. Never safe out there in the hinterlands, friends, the innkeeper told them, a woman with more wisdom than teeth. And what with the Fomors acting up even more than usual, reckless be the wilds. We're all worried one of those villages will get raided. Any day, you mark my words. The Fomors will raid another village? Latiya could practically hear Marie's heart panic at the news. She knew that look in the shopkeeper's eyes all too well because she'd experienced it herself. She swore she'd never allow Marie to be hurt ever again. Fear they might at that, lass. Never be trusting them lot, nor the louts in the royal army. The innkeeper started before catching herself. Apologies, friends. Just be meaning to say the soldiers are often absent. It's okay. You know how they act as well as I, the Crow Knight confided to the woman. Regions like this cost more to defend than they profit from, so they're just left fallow. And the royal army leaves their people to rot. Even with their sour mood of late, Latiya had never seen her mentor this angry before. The closer they got to the border, the more irritable he had become. But she'd never seen him speak ill of the royal army. She felt Marie take her hand and clench tightly. Clearly she was scared at his snapping, too. Mister, the royal army can't be that bad, right? I mean, they saved my village. Marie! You shall not raise your voice to her. Latia's warning to the Crow Knight carried a tone that she would not be stating it again. He turned on his squire in a flash of anger, then slumped back bitterly in his chair and poured more wine as the table lapsed into sullen silence. The silence continued for 2 days as they continued their trek towards Galen, in worse and worse spirits. The landscape here seemed as gray as their mood. We're nearing the border. Stop lagging behind and pick up the pace. Latiya didn't know how many times she'd heard him say as much over the last several days. Normally, they traveled at a leisurely pace and took it easy on the horses. Marie, in particular, liked to see the sights. She pouted at Latiya, but it caused the Crow Knight to snap at them uncharacteristically. The trio rode at a brisk pace, if only to ward off any further scolding from the Crow Knight. Yet even over the clatter of hooves, Latiya could hear something on the wind. The sound of horns and drums, and the smell of smoke. Something a child might mistake for a festival. She sat up in her saddle and gazed to the south, soon making out what could only be a settlement behind a wooded ridge. "Fomors!" Latiya called out, feeling that this was her moment. "Attacking another village! Damn it all!" Latiya could hear her mentor's breathing grow ragged. He followed her gaze, and she was ready to follow him into battle once he chose their best approach. Her heart broke when she finally realized he was only looking for a way around the village, not towards it. "We cannot simply ride away. We need to save them." "There's nothing we can do. Maybe if the royal army decides to show up." "But—" "Latiya, think. You want to save the day with a squire, a shopkeep, and a cripple? You want to get Marie killed? I'm sorry, kid, but we just don't have the numbers." "Latiya, I think he's right," Marie managed, catching Latiya's incredulous stare with her own heartbroken one. "I think we have to avoid this one. It's a lost cause." "Well, I must go. No one is lost as long as there is starlight." "Latiya, no!" The would-be knight could hear them cry out after her, but she had made her decision. Latiya couldn't fathom that Marie refused to help. Surely she, of all people, should have understood. What about all her previous talk of villagers banding together in such times? It was one of the things that made the men outside of the jungle seem so different from her family. All her life, Latiya had been told that what she wanted was wrong. At that moment, she had never felt so sure that she had been right all along. She urged her petrified horse into the village with as much speed as it could muster. The raiders looked to be the same Fomors she'd encountered as a child. Their savagery towards the villagers had not dulled in the years that passed. If anything, they appeared even angrier and more emboldened. Latiya wondered if there was a new leader to the pack. If she could fell their leader, perhaps the rest would flee. "Get away from them! These people are under my protection!" Using all the skills she had learned as a squire, Latiya skewered several of the raiders on her lance. Her stallion refused to heed her commands, however. The chaos and fear must have overpowered the animal, and it quickly bucked her off. "Have at you! The horse didn't make it far before falling to half a dozen Fomor blades. Latiya stood and tried to fight them off, but she was off balance from her fall, and there were far more than she realized. "No!" At that moment, Latiya had a sinking feeling that evil could win out over good. She found herself a child once more, gripped by the fear of approaching Fomors. Suddenly she felt a rumbling in the earth, thunderous hooves and churning soil, and she turned her head towards the approaching rider in disbelief. The Crow Knight, in his weathered armor and on his broken-down horse, charged fiercely towards her. Despite his rusted old sword, he killed their adversaries instantly with precise strikes. The crippled Crow Knight. The scene was nothing like all the rumors she'd heard about him over the past months. That was the moment she realized that she'd seen this combat style long ago. "Roland! Run!" She would remember those movements anywhere. It was the same knight who saved her all those years ago. She forced herself into action and carved away through the Fomors towards him, but it felt like an impossible distance as she watched him slowly succumb to 100 wounds. His movements were slowing, and more Fomor attacks were making it through his armor. He was pulled off his horse and struggled to stand, but made his way ever towards Latiya while carving through the last of this squadron. When they finally reached one another and this group of Fomors was slain, the Crow Knight fell down before her. He propped himself on his sword until he managed a kneeling position.
Latiya, you never listened then, her mentor managed, and you still don't listen now.
She could not stop crying, though the old man only spoke in warm tones. Roland, do not try to speak. We are going to make you better.
I lost that battle a long time ago, kid. So you'd better start listening to me now.
Roland took her hand.
Latiya, do you still want to become a knight?
Yes, I want to become a great knight, like you. He smiled at that, as he always did when she said something so innocent.
It's okay if you don't. You don't need the title to be a knight, Latiya. Hell, you don't even need the horse. I shouldn't have forced them on you.
Latiya! Mister!
Marie was running up to them. It was far too dangerous as there were still other Fomors raiding other buildings, but she could see that the Crow Knight was not long for this world.
Latiya, keep your head up and keep your composure, Roland managed with his final breaths. Also, take care of Marie, eh? This is for you.
With his last words, he handed Latiya his emblem of knighthood. The badge served as proof of his position. Able to see it up close for the first time, she could see that the badge was actually a metal casing around a smooth, polished stone in the shape of a leopard. Marie arrived and fell at Roland's side. The bloodthirsty Fomors encircled them. Latiya had already lost one friend due to her own carelessness, and she was not about to lose another. She stood up, gripping her lance in one hand and summoning the Kuja in the other. Latiya no longer had a beast to ride. She knew how to fight without one, though. She had already mastered that as a child. She was no longer playing sport. Her prey would see the magic unsheathed. Now her hunt would begin. In the blink of an eye, Latiya lashed out with the Kuja, shooting along the length of mystical blue chain. Streaks of blue light sliced through the village as the raiding party lost Fomors by the score, falling bloodied to the ground. "You are worse than beasts," Latiya intoned. "I shall not leave a single one of you alive." The Kuja hurtled her in every direction as she attacked the Fomors with deadly force. The destroyed animal pens were a fitting battlefield because what happened next was like a slaughterhouse. When they attacked, she flew into the shadows. When they ran away, she charged straight through them. Latiya would not allow a single Fomor to flee. Once Marie and the surviving townsfolk were safe, she landed silently back at Roland's side. Marie frantically tried to rouse him, but to no avail.
Hey, wake up. Hey, mister, come on. Please? You're messing with me, right? A little too much wine again. No one dies upright, so you're not dead. Not yet. Not yet.
When Marie finally accepted that and began to shudder uncontrollably, Latiya spoke up. "I am sorry." Marie lurched upward, lunging at her in fury.
You! It is all your fault! He died because of you, Latiya! I can't even look at you!
Her small hands beat against Latiya's chest, full of rage and resentment. Latiya had no excuses and simply stood there with her. Marie grew weaker and more desperate, finally stopping as she collapsed into Latiya's arms. If she had not rode into this battle, then their friend would still be alive. "You are right, Marie. This is my fault. I am sorry." They held each other there, at Roland's side for hours. Several of the surviving townsfolk approached to give Latiya their thanks, but upon seeing her sorrow, they retreated without a word. Hours later came the sound of approaching horses. It was the royal army, arriving far too late. Ranks of soldiers along with a band of knights spread out to speak with the villagers. One knight eventually made his way to Latiya and Marie. "We are sorry for your loss, madams." The young knight seemed on the verge of saying more, but his eyes widened as he looked at the slain Crow Knight. "Wait, it cannot be! Roland?"
You know him?
Marie was startled that they could. "Huh? Yes, this is Roland, who used to be a knight in our royal army. He was the best of us. He was already known as the Flash Knight when I had just joined the Order. He really was like sunlight on the battlefield, shining wherever things seemed darkest. He'd come crashing in with the fury of flame, followed his heart more than orders, but he was so inspiring and effective that command couldn't really punish him. One day, the Fomors were raiding another village. Roland saw them chasing down a young girl, so he broke formation to come to her rescue. He saved her, but he fell into an ambush on his way back to us. Roland somehow managed to get away and crawl back to us, but his leg was mangled in such terrible ways that even magic could not heal it. It kept him in constant pain and prevented him from walking or even riding well. He grew irritable and took to drink. I still thought everything would work out in the end, for a knight of Roland's esteem would surely have been given a higher position befitting a veteran. Perhaps something at the academy. Instead, he grew spiteful over the royal army's refusal to help the displaced villagers or rebuild their town. When we all headed back, he chose to stay there. No one heard from him for a long time, and we worried our hero had passed away in a gutter somewhere. Then we started hearing these rumors of folks seeing him in jousting tournaments, not as the noble Flash Knight, but as a greedy Crow Knight who only fought for coin. It's been years now, but seeing him here, having met his end while trying to protect another village, I think we've had the wrong idea about him this whole time." The other knights had approached during the tale, removing their helmets to salute their fallen compatriot. As they wondered where to bury him, Marie told them that she was from that other village and thought that he would like to be buried there. As soon as they were done tending to the wounded here, they carried Roland all the way back. They dug a grave at the village's far edge, at the place Roland used to sit every day. The funeral was a somber affair. When the knights and townsfolk had left, the women stood in silence there for a very long time. Marie was the first to speak.
The first time I met him was a little while after the attack. He'd sit right here, drinking every day, and just stare at us trying to rebuild the village. I didn't understand why he wouldn't help us, so I'd berate him. Told him if he had the strength to lift a bottle, then he could lift a hammer instead. I didn't even notice his injured leg at first. At least he isn't in pain any longer. He'd get real bitter and say that he'd already helped, that now it was our time to help him. Latiya, I didn't even know what that meant at that time. I came here every day to torment him, and I never knew that he'd been one of the knights that saved us. He never talked about it. He couldn't move around real well, and I think that just made him drink more. He did take us orphans under his wing, though. Rough exterior, but heart. Well, you already know all that. Once in a while, he'd just take off, and we wouldn't see him for weeks. Always came back with a sack of gold for us. We'd celebrate his charity at the time, but Now I know. He hauled that leg around to jousting matches and got a reputation for being the greedy crow knight when he was doing it all for us. He had to have been in immense pain during each match, and he still managed to win often. He really was a great knight.
Marie looked at her with teary eyes, but Latiya never handled her emotions well, so kept her silence.
Of course, you still won't say anything. Latiya, I need you to leave. You can't be here, please. Every time I look at you now, I remember all of this. And I can't, Latiya. I just can't.
Yes, milady. Wait, was Marie mad that she couldn't find the words? Was that the reason for their recent quarrels? Latiya didn't want to leave her side, especially not now. Simply willing herself to be more talkative caught in her throat, though. After a long moment of not being able to come up with anything, Latiya could only walk away and leave Marie at the grave. The last place where Latiya felt like she belonged slipped from her grasp. She had lost Roland. She had lost Marie. Hollow from loneliness and grief, Latiya found her steps stumbling back to the field. That same plain where she had first tasted the freedom of the wider world. It was dyed in golden tones as the sunset filtered through the grass. She took a moment to simply stand there and soak it in. In came a flood of emotions, far too many to sift through and deal with. She realized with sudden clarity that she didn't even know why she'd wanted to be a knight in the first place. Her cherished dream that started with Roland, only to get him killed a decade later. And for what? So she could use a larger spear? So she could ride a beast that hated her even now? So she could participate in jousting tournaments that she hadn't even known existed for the first 10 years of her dream? What was the point to any of it? She thought back to their very first conversation, right here, unable to hold her tears in any longer.
You are the knight? What do you mean? Well, a knight is someone who helps people that are in danger. Knights help people in danger?
She realized then that what she truly admired about Roland wasn't his title, his horse, or even his impressive combat style. It was helping people. There is no need to be such a knight. Latiya realized, a peaceful feeling coming over her. I only need to be me. I just need to save those in danger and be starlight for those who are lost. Just ahead of her, Latiya could see the jungle with its welcoming embrace. It is not time for me to return, Lua. Not yet. Once I can become like starlight, then I shall see you again. At first unsure if she wanted to attain perfection in order to show Lua or Marie or Roland, Latiya eventually realized that she wanted it for herself. With a look of newfound confidence, she nodded a simple goodbye to the tree line and turned her back on it, striding back into the wider world. Months later, the land baked under a hot summer sun. One well-to-do town featured a beautiful fountain in its square and made for a perfect place to relax and cool off on such days. On this day, though, screams echoed through the plaza.
Oh no! What do we do? Help! Stop him!
How? We're no fighters! The townsfolk worried among themselves as an assailant held a small child hostage, a knife held up to her throat. Don't you come near me, you hear? The assailant's crude voice echoed through the plaza. Just one step and this child is dead. Soldiers had arrived, but they reluctantly stepped back at his threat. The poor girl looked terrified. A figure strode briskly towards the fountain, dropping their cloak without fanfare. The townsfolk turned to see Latiya standing among them, wielding Roland's battered but still shining metal lance. The assailant stared slack-jawed at her entrance. Latiya kept her eyes locked with the abductor. She knew the soldiers would use her distraction as an opening.
Wait, is that Latiya, the Panther Knight?
The townsfolk finally recognized her. They soon started speaking hurriedly. I heard she helps anyone in danger.
She does help, but what happens to her surroundings? It's scary to even think about.
A sharp whistling sound cut through the scene. Caught off guard, the assailant whipped his head towards the sound, where the Kuja found purchase in the fountain. Latiya pulled herself towards him, her lance knocking the knife from his hand with impossible precision. Before it had even clattered to the cobblestones, she picked up the child and swung away over the heads of the crowd.
Ooh, Latiya, our hero!
While the soldiers restrained the assailant, the sound of the crowds cheering and applauding had filled the center square. Their good cheer was suddenly interrupted by a loud crack, followed by several more, and an ominous rumble occurred beneath their feet. What? The cheers turned to confusion, then worry. The square! What is happening? A moment after her daring rescue, the beautiful fountain cracked, split, and crumbled into nothing but drenched debris. Latiya could not hold back the power of the magic unsheathed, her very movements crashing through bricks like paws trampling leaves. She turned to the child. Are you okay?
Yeah.
The child looked up at her with a smile.
Who are you?
I am Latiya.
Latiya, thank you for helping me. Please take this.
Is this candy? Thank you. I am sure I shall enjoy it. Latiya held up the colorful treat, at least until she heard the other villagers. What is happening? I was trying to tell you before. She helps, but her surroundings get destroyed. Latiya turned back to the destroyed fountain with a sheepish grin. She'd made sure no one was around it, but she hadn't realized just how much damage her rescue would cause. She hadn't even struck the fountain or the miscreant with her lance, just the Kuja. She truly was getting more powerful by the season. How powerful would she become in time? And how could that possibly be a good thing? No wonder they all looked confused as to if they should feel joy or anger. Latiya had experienced this more often the further north she traveled. She found the best course of action was to mimic her tactic after the grand tournament, to get out of town as quickly as possible. The first step, though, was always to pay for one's mistakes. She stepped over to one of the shocked soldiers as she opened her coin purse. One of those money coins should be enough, right? I am sorry. Here is money to pay for the fountain. Farewell. Thank you, miss. A single coin? He looked back and forth between Latiya and the money, nodding despite his obvious confusion. After using the Kuja to quickly swing away from the throng and to the city gates, she landed with effortless acrobatic stealth and secured the cloth rags around herself once more. She walked out of the town, appearing as a mere traveler. The fountain, could it have been really expensive? Oh no, I hope that was enough money. Latiya was deeply upset that she made a mistake again, but the candy in her hand reminded her of how she had helped today. Where would you head next, Roland? There were no stars in the sky this early, but the sun would light her path for now. Smiling to herself, she popped the candy into her mouth. Oh, ew! Too sweet. Latiya smiled ruefully as she realized she actually missed the taste of snake meat. You really don't know how to start it. Must be a long story. Lan's voice finally snapped Latiya out of her reverie. Thoughts of those lost days had once again taken hold of her, making her witless to her surroundings. She once more found herself in a darkened forest on the northern continent, sitting with the would-be knight, Lan, as they waited for a carriage. Yes, long indeed. The man still looked to be in good spirits, and Latiya was relieved that she hadn't accidentally caused offense. It's okay. If you feel like talking about it later, we'll have plenty of time on the carriage. She didn't think Lan would understand her struggles, so she didn't answer. You've got to be looking for a fresh start, right? Come with me to Colin. Colin? Are there people there in need of help? Lan seemed surprised at Latiya's question, but smiled widely. Wow, I'll say. I'm stationed there as a mercenary, and we're really in a bind these days. That poor town has seen more than its fair share of troubles. I see. Why not come and give it a chance? I can introduce you to folks. Lan stretched and repositioned himself. He idly looked up and down the road for signs of the transport. Well, I still haven't caught your name. I'm Lan. Well met, I am. They were interrupted by a loud growl from Latiya's stomach, angrier and fiercer than any beast. She felt her face go red and tried to apologize, but her hunger pains grew louder still. Ha ha! Sounds like someone's hungry. Hold on. There is no game nearby you shall not find, and you are gone. Lan vanished into the trees despite her warning. The town of Colin. Perhaps I could trade these hides there. I shall need more money for the next time I accidentally break something. She idly flipped through a stack of pelts from only the most fearsome and impressive beasts. The colorful array was worth a fortune, though she had no way of knowing. Suddenly, a high-pitched scream shattered the night. Help! Latiya sprung up and rushed towards the cry, the Kuja shooting her from tree to tree with blinding speed. In no time at all, she landed near a frightened, red-haired woman. Fear not, milady. I shall allow no harm to come to you. What is the trouble? There was a bandit! He accosted me, the woman said. He took my belongings and ran that way. Curious. I cannot sense his presence. I can see no tracks. What did he look like? It all happened so quickly. I hadn't lit my campfire yet, and it was just so dark. Perhaps he has something like the Kuja and is not leaving any tracks. To Latiya's surprise, the woman's tears dried quickly. You're from the south, right? Yes, from southernmost Delshire. I suppose that I look a bit different from— Fascinating, truly. She could not understand why the woman had stopped crying. Perhaps her fears went away now that Latiya was here to save the day. The woman stepped right up and looked Latiya up and down. It felt like some beast sniffing around for its next meal. Do you have anything on you? Anything pricey, you know? Pricey? I am not sure that I— You know, pricey. Anything that shines or looks expensive. Maybe those rare treasures that you can only find in the south. The woman urged Latiya to hurry and grew visibly frustrated when the huntress tilted her head in confusion. Well, do you have anything of value? Money? Oh, I understand now. I do not collect such things. Yeah, right. You're actually not carrying that much. Yeesh. So you really don't have anything? Ugh, so boring. She saw the strange woman was still staring at her, growing more irritable. Latiya felt that she had to say something, and it was her responsibility to help her somehow. "Well, I do have these pelts, hides that I've hunted from various beasts. I had meant to trade them in Kolhan." The woman smiled from ear to ear at the hall.
I haven't seen this type of pelt before. Or that one. You've got some goods on you.
"That one is from a fearsome reptile," Latiya began, "with scales like sun-soaked stone who beset me while I was—"
Yeah, whatever. Well, what are you waiting for? The woman cut her off impatiently. The thief fled that way. Don't worry. I'll make sure the carriage doesn't leave without you. Oh, and let me hold on to these pelts for you. They'd only slow you down."
"Wise words. Then I shall take my leave. Fear not, milady, for I shall not rest until I find him." None of Latiya's keen senses picked up any trace of a thief, but it only made her wonder if she was up against a truly challenging opponent. No matter. She could hunt down anything. The woman chuckled as she scooped up all the hides Latiya had worked so hard to collect during her journey north, strolling away. Back at the road, the carriage finally arrived. When Lan heard someone approach, he picked up some of the fruit he'd collected and turned towards them. "Hey, I found some fruit. So what is your name anyway?" Once the figure stepped into the light of the carriage's lantern, however, he seemed surprised. "Wait, Vela? What are you doing out here?"
It's you, Lan?
The woman known as Vela appeared instantly annoyed, any pretense of her previous story gone. Yeah, no need to be so rude. Hey, have you seen another woman around here? Looks like a knight, carries a huge lance all by herself."
Well, I tell you, but it'll cost you."
She eyed his bundle of fruit hungrily. "Really? Fine, here you go." With a sigh, Lan handed her a piece of fruit. "So, have you seen her?" The woman known as Vela boarded the carriage, kicking her pack full of Latiya's hides under her seat and out of his view as she answered him cheerfully,
"Nope."
Latiya chased after her imaginary foe for a long while, before she finally stopped in the densest region of the woods. "I appear to have been taken for a fool. There is most certainly no criminal out here." Though she had lost her way in this new land, a quick glance upward to the stars' positions was all she needed to reorient herself. She would reach that town she was told of if she continued in this direction. Well, the townsfolk will definitely need help to protect themselves from people like that woman. I wonder what other troubles plague them. And what is a mercenary? Latiya settled her lance over her shoulder with practiced ease as she strode forward with renewed purpose. We hope you have enjoyed this unabridged production of Vindictus Origins, Latiya, by Nexon Korea Corporation. This program was produced by Diane Audio Services. Text copyright 2022 by Nexon Korea Corporation. Production copyright 2022 by Nexon Korea Corporation. All rights reserved. Thank you for listening.